Hello, my name is Margaret Adele, and at the age of 10 years old, I decided that I was going to be a foster parent. Both of my parents had foster siblings growing up, and it became this big life goal of mine. And a week shy of my 27th birthday, my husband and I got our foster license. Now, my 27th birthday was April of 2020, so I became a foster parent in a pandemic. But I've always wanted to do this, and once I started my booktube channel, I knew early on that when I became a foster parent, I wanted to do some kind of foster mom reads series. I've got a little bit of experience under my belt now, only about 4 to 5 months, but more than I had before. And a friend of my husband's suggested this book for us, and once I looked it up, I knew it was the perfect book to start off the series with, and that is The Language of Flowers by Vanessa Diffenbach. This is a contemporary all about a woman who aged out of the foster system, meaning that she turned 18 without any adoption or permanency plan, and she is living homeless on the streets, but she is really adept at knowing the language of flowers. And if you know anything about the language of flowers, they can be used in certain bunches to communicate certain things. And I love that idea. I've read it before in some other books. And in this case, the protagonist gets picked up by a florist and things start changing her life around. And then the synopsis isn't exactly clear, but apparently there's some mysterious vendor that makes her question things and gives her a chance at happiness, but she has to put them things to bed, I take it. And this was also written by a foster parent. This was her debut. So I'm really excited to get this one started. I also have another book on my list, so this will definitely be a series that continues. Now I'm hoping I can read this in about 3 days. It's just over 300 pages, and I'm hoping to get about 100 pages a day, but I did just go back to work, and I'm working in an elementary school in a pandemic, so I don't know where my mind will be, but I'm excited, so let's jump in. So I have read the first 50 pages of The Language of Flowers while on the exercise bike. It's a lot of fun to read on the exercise bike. It makes it go by faster. But it's nonlinear storytelling with her being homeless and trying to get work at this florist shop with all of her flower knowledge and also her placements as a kid. And it's one of those things where a lot of books tend to have this very negative view of foster homes. And it could have been before, it could have been an earlier one. I think this book was published 10 years ago and the character was already 18. A lot has changed in foster parenting. A lot of new laws have been made since 2008. But the class I took gave a lot of good information, even not all of it that we've used yet, but we've used a lot of it. And so from here, it's y'all are doing everything wrong. Food. With foster kids, food is a big thing. A lot of foster kids come from homes where there was a lot of food trauma and they didn't know where the next meal was coming from. So a big thing to tell you in the class is always have some form of food that doesn't have a limit. So yeah, you don't need kids eating Oreos 24/7, but fresh fruit or granola bars, or what we call them healthy snacks. Our little gets 2 treat snacks or sweet snacks a day, one after lunch, one after dinner, and then any other snacks have to be healthy. But we make sure that she's fed, and in here they use food as such, a reward, dinner as a reward, and you should never use dinner as a reward for behavior. Dinner should just be a given. You give something else extra and make that the reward for behavior and take that away. I will never use food or fear as a behavioral, catalyst. I'll use boredom. That's what you use. You make them bored until they want to do whatever you're supposed to be doing. But I'm liking this so far. I like the main character. I want to the foster mom in me is I want to make her feel better, and I know how to, and all these people are being stupid. But I'm hoping this has a happy ending. Really hoping. But in general, I would love to see a foster-based book where there was actual, nice foster parents. Nice, genuinely nice, not, rough around the edges and overly strict, but nice. Maybe I'll write that one. Maybe that'll be the one I write. I don't know. I'm liking it. I'm going to read another 50 pages tonight, and I've been talking for too long as it is, so I will see you in a bit. So I have gotten to page 103, and now there's kind of this mystery. She had one long-standing foster mother that called her daughter, but some big thing happened, and she got sent away, and you're not sure what. And I'm really liking that. There's also a romance, but it's really early in the story, so I'm wondering what's gonna go wrong here. I also like the descriptions of her time with Elizabeth, the long-standing foster mother she had when she was 9 years old, and the anger that she has. And it reminds me a lot, not of necessarily foster kids that I've had, but special needs kids that I work with. I've had shoes thrown at my head. I've had first graders jump on my back. I've had a lot of that. And so I feel that. Unfortunately, that's not the kind of foster kids that I could ever bring home because I deal with that at work, and everyone needs a break at some point. But I'm intrigued. It's really heart-wrenching how much she struggles with the idea of connecting to anyone, but I really want to see her get her happy ending, so I'm going to push through just for that. And the romance is cute, but without being over the top. Like, you still get that, like, she's still, I mean, she's a tsundere, let's be honest, but I'm enjoying it, and I'm going to call it here. I will do another 100 pages tomorrow, hopefully, and get this read real quick. Alright, it is day 2. I am once again slightly sweaty from my workout, but I've read the next 50 pages in the language of flowers, and it's really interesting, all the little hints and ideas, because in this book we're getting very close to the adoption date where she would have been adopted by this foster mom, and you know it falls through, but you don't know why. And it's definitely different than what adoption is today. You don't have to be living with the child for a year. There's not an adoption center. Like, it's pretty much adoption is always the goal for a child for whom there's been TPR, or termination of parental rights, and unless the child themselves says, I just want to age out, like a teenager says they want to age out. So it's definitely different. I'm still not sure when this book is supposed to take place, because, like, I have not heard one reference to a cell phone, and it was written in 2011, so if it was supposed to be like that time period, cell phones were still really common. So I'm not sure when, but the characters are intriguing. The romance, we're currently at the not going well part, and we're getting closer to the reveal of what happened. And then my guess is the final act of the book will be Victoria making peace with all of it and finding her new way in life. And I'm excited for that part. But I'm still enjoying it a lot. I don't think so far that this would be a very accurate picture of what the system is like, but I think it's a very accurate picture of what someone in Victoria's position would feel like, if that makes sense. Her emotions as a teenager that aged out of the system is still on par with what I know, even though I've mostly done littles, but the system itself and the way it's set up might have been the way it was set up at one point in time, but it's not how it is anymore, at least not where I am. So keep that in mind if you wanted to read this. The system is probably not accurate to modern day foster care. So remember when I said that things were getting dark? I lied. That was only the beginning. Now they're getting dark. I am just over page 200, over 2/3 of the way through, and it's gotten, super dark, but, like, you can already kind of see the beginnings of her turning things around. There's also some surprises. Still don't know exactly what happened with Elizabeth, but it's really sad. And, like, her social worker was just horrible. and granted, I haven't come face to face with too many social workers, because both the littles we've had the same social worker, but, like, wasn't that bad. Like, definitely never spoke to the kids the way that Meredith speaks to her, ever. Like, just, ugh. But anyway, I'm looking forward. I want the happiness. I want the happy ending. I want the getting her life back on track and not sleeping in city parks. But I almost feel like I need to, like, look up, like, maybe some interview with the author and find out exactly where the inspiration came from, because she was a foster mom. I don't know if she still is, and it was apparently came from that, so I don't know if it was maybe from real life experiences or how much she came up with herself. But I got one more day, and it's going to be hopefully the nicest part where everything goes well. Fingers crossed. I am a sucker for a happy ending. Another, well, over 50 pages on the exercise bike. I actually didn't want to stop today. It got darker. It got so darker. And I was wondering if they would explain how she hadn't gotten adopted sooner because she was abandoned at 3 weeks. And nowadays, 3 weeks, that's like that baby's getting adopted out of foster care almost instantly. Pretty much any child under the age of 2 of any skin color has a pretty good chance of being adopted. So I was hoping they would discuss why that hadn't happened, but didn't really. I don't want to spoil things because big things are happening, and yes, it then turned darker. I'm hoping we're going to have the wake up and things will be improved scene. A reunion, definitely 2 reunions if I'm thinking about it. But there's definitely things that like I'm looking forward to, that I'm like, oh, I can't wait till we get to this part, or at least I hope that part is coming. It's very heart-wrenching, and again, very dark. There almost needs to be trigger warnings for anyone with, I guess, depression. I'm not quite sure exactly how to explain her thought process, but I feel like if you're in a similar place of self-loathing, this one might hurt or help, depending on who you are. But if you have any kind of like depression or self-loathing tendencies, be careful going into this one because it goes there. But now I am still sweaty and I want to shower, so I will go do that and then eventually come back to this to finish it out. Alright, I have finally finished The Language of Flowers by Vanessa Diffenbach. The ending was super sweet, so cute, and uplifting, but in that realistic way where, like, the main character still has some things to work on, but she's finally prepared to start working on it, and I love that idea. I think that's going to be so cute. I have a lot of thoughts, but this lighting is weird, and it's after 9 p.m., and for someone like me, that's actually getting pretty late, and I want some time to hang out. So I'm going to do an overall recap tomorrow and wrap this whole thing up with my thoughts, what I viewed it as just as a book, and then how it did or did not relate to my experiences in foster care. So I will see you then. It is the next day. I am in full hipster mode, and it is time for the recap. Now, I realize that the synopsis on this book is very vague, and so I'm going to try to give a quick overview. The beginning of this book follows Victoria Jones on her 18th birthday as she is being emancipated from the foster care system. Her time within the foster care system has not been kind to her. Everyone has either passed over her for adoption, or in certain cases, she left the house. There's been a large amount of abuse. She ends up homeless for a little bit, but gets a job with a woman working as a florist and discovers that she has a very big gift for working with flowers because she loves the language of flowers. There's also a non-linear storyline in which you learn more about her history in the foster care system, specifically with one foster mother named Elizabeth, and you know it didn't end well, but you don't know why. Now, while working as a florist, she goes to the flowers market on a weekly basis, or a weekendly basis, I guess you could say, and there's a man that stares at her in a strange way, and she discovers is actually connected to her past in the system, and things kind of go from there with her trying to come to terms with her past and move forward to create a new family for herself. Now, I found an interview with the author from a while back, and they asked her if this was based on real life stories or, you know, backgrounds of kids that she'd fostered, and she said no, that this was not anything that she had heard of specifically. She also said that she didn't want to put foster parents in a bad light in general, but the problem is that the book definitely does that. Definitely so much does that. Victoria is in the system by the age of 3 weeks, abandoned by her parents, and throughout her entire time in the system has only really one good placement. And it does talk a lot about how a lot of it is how her behavior turns violent at times, and that's the result of feeling like she doesn't have a connection to anyone. And that is very true. That does happen with foster kids. But I'm still caught on the, if she entered the system at 3 weeks, how was she not adopted? Because in the foster care system today, if a child enters into the system at 3 weeks with total termination of parental rights, that child's adopted like that. That child is guaranteed, you like, call the first people up. If they're young and haven't had, you know, an adopted child yet, that's an instant yes. So it does, for this day and age, stretch believability a little bit, at least in her early years, and it doesn't really explain why she wasn't an unhealthy child as far as the book can show you. So that was a little bit strange. But I definitely do think that this paints the foster care system in probably a worse light than the author intended. But again, this was from a while back. This book was published in 2011, and the book didn't even get sold to the publisher until a year before then, so I figure it took her a while to find an agent because it was her debut, so that's why. So this was probably written, like, at the latest, like, late 2000s. And the act, what is it called? The Fostering Success or Fostering Connections and Success into an Adoption Act was passed in 2008, which was specifically made to lessen the time a child spends in the foster care system and move them on towards permanence. And in foster care, permanence is whatever happens on the other side of foster care. If that's return to the birth family, return to the birth parents, or adoption by someone else. So the system as it is today is probably markedly different than it was even when this book was being written, just give or take 12, 13 years ago. And like I mentioned before, I don't think this is a very good look at what the system is, at least the system as I know it, but it is a very good look at how the system can affect a child's thoughts and behaviors, and how a lot of the times children will purposefully sabotage a placement because in their mind it's already going to end. Why am I going to wait around? Now, I have yet to come across that kind of child. Granted, I have only fostered 2 kids at this point, but they're really trying in this day and age to make a child's time in the foster care system as short as possible. The goal is for a child 3 and under to spend 6 months or less, and for a child 4 years old and older to spend 12 months or less. So the idea is you want a max of a year in the system, preferably much shorter. And in general, I do like the main character. I loved her struggle, and I also loved how realistic the ending was, because while the ending was hopeful, it wasn't everything solved right then and there. It wasn't every I dotted and every T crossed. There was still a journey ahead of the character to get to that place where she could be a full, unabashed part of this family group. But she wasn't quite there yet, and you get the gist from like the ending where she's gonna get there. But in general, I would definitely suggest this book. And I think in a lot of cases, you can't really take these kind of books as being a purely, I guess, factual representation of the foster care system, because they are going to focus on kids who were abused for the drama of it. And that's not to say that abuse doesn't happen. It 100% does. But like, I have a worker that comes to my house specifically to check on me, not even the child, every month. And then there's a different worker that checks on the child every month, just to make sure that everything is healthy and okay. And I've actually been told that it is completely possible for me to be put under suspicion of abuse without having abused. Like, that's the thing where at this point in Iowa, like, if a child says, hey, my foster parent is doing X, it is an immediate investigation. And again, that might have changed since this book was written. I definitely want to find a more recently published book about foster care, specifically like within the last 5 years, or even I could get like 3, that'd be fantastic. Books are so slow to write, it's so, it's a race. But anyway, I definitely would suggest this. It definitely put, I think, some things in perspective for me. I have not had a child as struggling as Victoria was in this book. And again, if you were dealing with issues of self-loathing or struggling to connect to other humans, I would definitely give a trigger warning for this book, to overall be prepared for just the amount that Victoria thinks she's worthless at times. It was very heartbreaking, but if you're prepared for that, I highly suggest it. So, I am going to continue to look for more books for this series. I don't think it's going to be a very quick turnaround. I don't think you should expect to see like Foster Mom Reads videos every month even, but I definitely have at least 1 or 2 other books planned, so I would stay tuned for that if you're into it. I also at some point just want to do a here's foster parenting, or here's the exact steps I took, or here's what the little minutia of the system is like being in it, for anyone who's interested in that, because I've gotten some questions from the BookTube community and from some viewers before. But with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.